God said he would shake the heavens and the earth, not disturb them, not adjust them, shake them. And what people are calling a reset, a correction, a market cycle, a political transition, a technological disruption, Scripture named it more than 2,000 years ago. The unsettling part is not that the shaking is here. The unsettling part is that it never comes empty-handed. It comes to move what was sitting in the wrong place. It comes to expose what was built without breath. It comes to push wealth, power, influence, and opportunity out of old containers and into new hands. Maybe that is why so many people feel restless right now. Not tired, not lazy, restless. You wake up with that strange pressure in your chest. You try to pray, and the prayer feels heavier than usual. You scroll through headlines and feel like the whole world is being rearranged in front of your eyes. Prices shift. Systems wobble. Careers that once looked untouchable suddenly look fragile. People with titles look confused. People with less polish, but more clarity are quietly rising. And somewhere inside you, under all the noise, there is a whisper you cannot ignore. Something is moving. You have felt it too, haven't you? That sense that the old map is fading. That the strategies everybody trusted 5 years ago no longer carry the same oil. That survival thinking is breaking down. That performance is being exposed. That borrowed language, borrowed identity, borrowed confidence, none of it can survive what is happening now. If that tension has been sitting in your spirit lately, if you have felt both uneasy and strangely expectant, leave a simple, "I feel the shift," in the comments. Not for the algorithm, for honesty, because some people have been feeling this in silence, thinking they were the only one hearing thunder before the rain. Haggai spoke into a moment that looked small on the surface. A half-built temple, a discouraged people, a work that seemed too weak to matter. Nothing flashy, no empire applause, no visible proof that heaven was doing anything spectacular. And that is usually where God speaks his most disruptive words. Not always in the palace, often in the rubble. He told them there would come a shaking of heaven, earth, sea, and dry land. He said the nations would be shaken. And then he said something that still offends a fear-driven mind. The treasure of nations would come, not maybe, not metaphorically to make people feel better. He tied the shaking to movement. He tied the trembling to transfer. He tied instability to redirection. That means the shaking is not proof that God has abandoned the earth. It is often proof that he is intervening in it. Most people think wealth transfer means rich people becoming poor and poor people becoming rich overnight. That is the shallow version. That is the fantasy version. That is the version people chase when they want money without transformation. But the deeper law is more serious than that. Wealth moves where capacity can hold it. It moves where alignment can govern it. It moves where vision can multiply it. It moves away from hands that worship it and toward hands that can steward it. That is why some people lose everything in a season of shaking, while others build the strongest thing of their lives in the very same hour. Same economy, same year, same internet, same headlines. Different vessel. There is a reason quantum language resonates with this moment. At the deepest level, reality does not respond only to force. It responds to pattern, to coherence, to what is observed, held, and stabilized. A chaotic field can collapse into form around the dominant signal. Spiritually, that means this. What you consistently see, believe, speak, and embody begins to organize your world. Not as magic, as alignment. And the shaking season reveals signal. It reveals what was performance and what was conviction, what was hype and what was substance, what was borrowed confidence and what was actual faith, what looked expensive but was empty, what looked hidden but was carrying weight the whole time. That is why 2026 feels so intense for so many people. This is not just economic. It is spiritual architecture. Whole systems are being tested for resonance. Businesses, governments, church cultures, media empires, personal identities, income streams, even the way people define security. And when the testing begins, whatever was held together by illusion starts to fracture. I have seen people panic because an old doorway closed. Then months later they realized the doorway was never provision. It was dependency wearing the costume of provision. That is the cruelty of false stability. It comforts you while it weakens you. Some of you know exactly what that feels like. You stayed in relationships that drained your clarity because they felt familiar. You stayed in jobs that shrank your spirit because the paycheck felt predictable. You held on to methods that once worked because you could not imagine God speaking a new instruction. Then the shaking came, and it felt violent at first. But what if the violence was not against you? What if it was against the cage? There is a difference between loss and liberation. In the beginning, they can feel almost identical. A branch being cut thinks the gardener is cruel, until spring proves otherwise. This is why Haggai matters right now. The people were grieving the glory of what used to be. They were comparing the present structure to the former one. They thought they were living in a weaker chapter, and God answered that grief with a promise that sounded impossible. The latter house would carry greater glory than the former. Greater. Not equal. Greater. That is a dangerous word if you still idolize the past, because it means heaven is not sentimental about old systems. It means God does not bow to nostalgia. It means what looks smaller now may be carrying a dimension the old era never touched. That is where many people miss the transfer. They are staring at what is falling apart, mourning what feels familiar, while something holier is being built right beside them in humble clothing. The next move rarely arrives dressed like the last one. That would be too easy, too obvious, too safe for the ego. The next move often looks unqualified at first, unpopular, underfunded, misunderstood, quiet, like a seed. And seeds offend people who are addicted to spectacle. The silver is mine, God says. The gold is mine. That sentence destroys two lies at once. First, it destroys the lie that wealth belongs ultimately to men with power. Second, it destroys the lie that your source is the current system. No banker created gold. No institution authored value. No empire invented supply. They can only manage what was already his. That means when God decides to redirect resources, he is not asking permission from the world he made. He is not nervous about recessions. He is not intimidated by central banks. He is not confused by inflation charts. He is not wringing his hands over technological disruption. He sees the hidden river beneath visible systems, and he knows how to guide it. This is where people get uncomfortable, because they want transfer without responsibility. But when wealth enters new hands, it exposes the heart of the one holding it. If you are still begging money to tell you who you are, money will master you. If you are still using lack as your personality, increase will terrify you. If you are still trying to look blessed instead of become trustworthy, more will only make your fractures louder. The transfer is not just about who receives. It is about who has become safe to receive. That word safe matters. Some people are talented but not safe. Some are charismatic but not safe. Some are brilliant but not safe. Some can attract money but cannot carry peace. Some can generate revenue but cannot sustain order. Some know how to gather attention but do not know how to govern appetite. And in a shaking season, heaven is not just looking for talent. Heaven is looking for stewardship. That is why obscurity has been training some of you. That is why hidden seasons were not punishment. That is why restraint was mercy. That is why the doors that did not open yet may have been protecting you from being enlarged before you were integrated. You thought you were being delayed. You were being deepened. If this is landing somewhere real in you, let that like be your quiet yes. Not to me. To the truth you can feel pressing against your own spirit. Because agreement matters. Not performative agreement, embodied agreement. And if you have been asking what to do with this moment, there is something I made for people who do not want inspiration without practice. It is called the Quantum Wealth Scripture Journal, 30 Days of Bible, Reflection, and Practical Money Moves Woven Together. Not as a gimmick, as a way to help you retrain the inner world while you build with your hands in the outer one. If that feels timely, it is waiting in the description and the first comment. Here is what many never see. Wealth transfer is not always loud when it begins. Sometimes it starts as clarity, sometimes as discernment, sometimes as the courage to stop chasing what no longer carries life. Sometimes as one idea that feels almost too simple to respect. Sometimes as favor landing on a conversation that should have gone nowhere. Sometimes as the sudden ability to see value where others saw nothing. That is transfer in seed form. Before money changes accounts, perception changes. Before doors open publicly, authority settles privately. Before provision arrives in your hand, identity is being repaired in your spirit. You cannot hold new substance with an old self-concept. That is why the shaking feels internal too. Old beliefs are coming loose. Family narratives are breaking. Religious fear is being confronted. Scarcity scripts you inherited from wounded environments are being brought into the light. Some of you were taught to feel guilty for wanting increase, as if holiness and fruitfulness were enemies, as if struggle itself were proof of purity, as if being under-resourced made you more spiritual. But Scripture does not glorify bondage. It glorifies trust. It does not worship poverty. It worships God. And when God entrusts wealth to aligned hands, it is not merely for comfort. It is for assignment. Provision is never just personal in the kingdom. It has movement in it, a table in it, a shelter in it, a mission in it, a testimony in it. The question is not only, can I receive more? The deeper question is, what can move through me if I stop resisting becoming the kind of person who can carry more? That question changes everything, because now the focus shifts from chasing transfer to becoming a landing place for it. And that becoming is rarely glamorous. It looks like integrity when nobody is watching. It looks like cleaning up your relationship with money. It looks like ending secret chaos. It looks like learning to keep your word. It looks like building systems instead of living in emotional improvisation. It looks like praying over your finances and then finally opening the spreadsheet you have been avoiding. It looks like generosity without self-erasure. It looks like rest without passivity. It looks like action without panic. This is the part people skip because it is quieter than manifestation language. But quiet foundations outlast loud declarations. The temple in Haggai's day did not look like enough at first. That was the whole offense. People wanted visible grandeur. God was talking about glory. Those are not the same thing. Grandeur impresses the eye. Glory rearranges the atmosphere. And I think many are about to learn that what heaven calls increase does not always resemble what culture taught them to admire. There are people with smaller audiences carrying greater weight. People with simpler models carrying cleaner flow. People with less noise carrying more authority. People who look late but are actually right on time because they are no longer trying to build a kingdom on a cracked inner life. That may be you. Not because you are special in the shallow sense, but because you have been crushed enough to stop playing games. Because you have known what it is to be emptied. Because your hunger is no longer theatrical. Because you are finally willing to obey instructions that do not flatter your ego. There is a holy advantage in that kind of surrender. When your identity is no longer leased from applause, you become difficult to manipulate. When your peace is not chained to outcomes, you become difficult to scare. When your source is not human approval, you become difficult to control. And people who cannot be controlled are dangerous to systems built on fear. Slow down enough to ask better questions. What false foundation is being shaken out of me? What pattern can no longer come with me? What have I been calling security that was actually bondage? What gift has been waiting beneath my fear? What assignment would require a larger internal capacity than the one I have lived from until now? And who am I becoming in the middle of this? That last question matters more than most people know. Because the future is not only reached, it is matched. You do not sustainably arrive in rooms that your character cannot inhabit. So if you have found a home in messages like this, if you are one of those people who can feel there is more happening beneath the surface than the headlines admit, subscribe and stay close. Not out of urgency, out of recognition. There is a remnant of people learning how to see beyond appearances, how to read times and seasons with both spiritual intelligence and practical wisdom, how to build without bowing to fear. If that is your path, this space is for you. And for those who quietly want to help hold this work up, there is also a membership here on the channel. It is a simple, meaningful way to support what is being built, and members receive early access to videos as well. Nothing loud about it. Just sincere gratitude for those who choose to carry part of the weight with us. Now let this settle. The shaking is not random. The trembling is not meaningless. The exposure is not cruelty. And the collapse of certain systems is not the collapse of God's ability to provide. It may be the very mechanism by which provision is being redirected into cleaner hands, wiser hands, steadier hands, hands that do not worship wealth, but know how to send it where life can grow. That is the real transfer. Not envy getting its revenge, not greed changing costumes, not one idol replacing another. A reordering, an unveiling, a moment when what has been hidden in character, prayer, discipline, vision, and private obedience begins to show up in material form. So do not measure this season only by what is falling. Measure it by what is becoming visible. The idea that will not leave you alone. The discipline you are finally ready to keep. The relationship with money that is being healed. The courage to release what no longer fits. The strange peace that keeps visiting you in the middle of global uncertainty. That peace is not denial. It may be evidence that your spirit recognizes something your eyes are still catching up to. Haggai was never just about ancient stones. It was about the moment heaven interrupts human despair and says, "Build anyway, I am in this, and what is coming will carry greater glory than what you lost." That word still breathes. Maybe the shaking around you is not announcing your ruin. Maybe it is announcing that your hands are being prepared to hold what your old life could not. And if that is true, then this message cannot stay trapped with one person. Send it to the friend who has been feeling the shift, but could not explain it. Send it to the one who is watching old systems crack and wondering if God still moves in times like these. Send it as an act of service, as a quiet alarm, as a reminder that when heaven shakes the ground, it is not only removing, it is making room. So I'll leave you with this. When the dust settles from this shaking, will your hands be clinging to what was, or ready for what is being placed in them now?